And we're live.
Hello and welcome to another live demonstration, the first one of 2022. Just getting used to saying that and writing it as well. So welcome. I'm going to challenge myself because it's a big new year, new resolution as such, and I'm sure you all kind of make a new start. I don't do many landscapes because I find them very challenging, to be honest. I can't see the wonderful colours that landscape artists find from a landscape. So I'm going to do a winter landscape, which has got less colours in. Using colours I'm actually quite happy with, a red, yellow, blue. I've got two blues, white and black. Not many colours, but again, colours I'm familiar with, red, yellow, blue. These are what I tend to use in all of my paintings. Different blues, different reds, different yellows, but I don't stick to many other colours. So, yeah, that's more comforting for me. And I'm going to be using a medium I'm happy with. It's the System 3 acrylic, great acrylic paint. I think people use it worldwide. So, again, comfort. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a medium. So this is the slow dry medium. So the main thing people ask me about is the drying time for acrylics, because acrylics do dry really quickly. And I haven't used this before. I've recommended using it because I know what it does, but I haven't actually used it before. And it was a learning curve for me. So this is some slow dry medium. I actually put it out 2 days ago and it's still wet, which was a surprise because when I came to clean my palette, it was still movable. And that's not what you expect if you're familiar with acrylics. You kind of think, oh, didn't expect that. It's normal. It's exactly what it should do, because what it's going to do is slow down the drying time of your acrylics. So it's easy to mix. It's 1-to-1. So what I usually do is pick up a bit with my brush and a big bit of paint. And what it means is the acrylics aren't drying really quickly, and I've got that lovely time, like an oil paint, to mix and blend. So I'm trying something new, and we'll see how it goes. But I've tried it once, and I was happy. I was really happy and learnt a lot. And I will talk to you about other things I learnt while doing it. So, slow dry medium, sometimes called a retarder, and it does what it says. You also notice I haven't got a lot of paint out, and I don't need quite as much paint because using a medium, you're actually using half the amount of paint. So if it's 1-to-1, so one amount to one amount paint, you're actually doubling your volume of paint, but only using half the pigment. So it's great. Normally I would use a big brush, but I'm going to use a small brush because I'm going to just put on lots of little bits of colour. So 1-to-1. So one bit of slow dry medium to one bit of paint. Just mix them up. And it doesn't dry quickly. So I was drying, the house was quite cold. And because I'm used to painting with acrylics, I was going, it's not drying very quickly. It still feels damp and cold. And even the next day, to be fair, because it was a cold house, I was thinking, this is strange. And then I remembered I was using the slow dry medium. So even though I purposely used it, I just kind of forgotten. So it says it doubles slows the drying time by twice as much. So say an acrylic dries in about an hour in a warm environment, depending on the thickness, it will take 2 hours. So it just gives you that window of opportunity for blending. But because the house was quite cold, it stayed wet for quite a while. So I'm going to do this fabulous landscape, which the picture is by kind permission of Michelle Woodward, who I work with. And what's really good is I can shout out with my colleagues and go, I need some pictures. And they'll send me pictures, and they just give you inspiration for the next thing you want to do. So I'm keeping it quite transparent, and I'm not going to probably use a lot of water. I'm going to use the medium. Now the medium doesn't make it the paint flow much easier because it's the same viscosity or same consistency pretty much as the paint. But it does seem to go on nice and creamily, but that's also a lot to do with System 3. I'm just putting a bit of yellow in here. And this is how I'm going to build up this, is just putting splashes of colour on as I go along. There's one bit. The main colour I'm going to be using is white, and that's the reason I've put 2 whites here, because I'm a real devil for mixing colour into a white, and therefore it doesn't become that pure, clean white. So I'll often put a little bit to one side that if it does become contaminated, I still have some pure white without having to take some out fresh. So let me put a bit of this in. I'm only going to use a bit of colour because it is really strong. I need to clean my brush. A bit of striped blue here. Maybe I've been a bit and a bit of blue here, stripe of blue there, some blue at the top. And the reason I'm putting it on quite roughly is because I know I can blend and soften. So a bit of the white. I'm using the water to clean my brush, but not to thin the paint. So white, medium, and white. And white I'm going to be using for blending. So a lot of white on here. And what it will do is pick up the colour. I'm using it in that kind of scrubby technique because I'm pushing the paint into the canvas. You can see there how that's now softening and blending. Just make sure I've got plenty of. So I'm using the white as a blending tool. Really soft. Just flick your brush over the surface. I could always add more colour on. It's acrylic. Acrylics are just really open to, you know, trying things and then going, oh, that didn't work, let's try something else. So let's push some white into here just to take some of that yellowness off. Go over the trees. I can still see them because I'm painting quite thinly. So I'm actually quite painting in a much more, not quite a watercolour way, but it's having a similar effect, this very soft, blended. Normally with watercolour, you wet the surface and the paint moves into these. Well, I'm having to use the brush to move it. I'm keeping it soft, not too bright. Again, I usually like very bright colours, straight on with the colour. Very strong, straight away. Again, just trying something different. Let's try and keep it softer. And I'm finding this little brush works really well for this. You can see how much white I'm using. Look at that. Oh, it's lovely how it goes into the paint and moves it. Now, with acrylics, It can be difficult to do this kind of technique because the paint has already dried and it gets sticky and a bit stiff on the surface. So you just can't move it. Once it's dried, you can't move it. And this medium is opening up this technique. It's a bit of red, but I don't want it too strong. Let's put a bit of pink into the sky. So there's me red, yellow, blues. Trying to get some colour in this sky. That's quite strong, but it doesn't matter. Clean my brush off, and good old white can bring it back, take it much softer. Just go over the tree line. I'm changing my direction as well, because that softens even more. Just give some dramatic pinks in there. And I haven't put anything in here. I've not built up any layers in here. Not worrying where I put it fully. Just putting colour on. Some blues. Looks untidy at the moment, but you'll see as it starts to build up, it does come together. Medium and white. That's a bit too yellow. I want some nice white over here, because that's not blended yet. I think I still need a bit of red, possibly here, just. There we go. Is that a bit too strong, maybe? So, I'm going to use a different blue, which is a Prussian blue. So this is much greyer, much darker, it's not as bright. Bit of red, so a bit of kind of a purple colour. Bit of white, some medium. Take it off my brush, I want it still a bit dark. And I'm going to darken up here. Darken down here. I did tell Gary I would jump around because he needs to know where to follow with the camera. And I just tend to jump around when I've got colour on my brush.
I've played it safe. I'm on a wide shot. I can see everything. It's all good. You're not going to catch me out today.
Because I'm often, my brain is just working, I forget that Gary has to actually follow. And I do know that I will probably jump around with this. Because, like I said, once I've got colour on my brush, if I know I need colour elsewhere, I'll just put it elsewhere. So, put in the dark at the top, because there's logic for this. The light source is here, so the sun is going down or coming up. I can't tell. But that means the sky will be darker here because the light isn't quite up there yet. So by putting this, you're getting that sense of where the light is. Put some more dark here. Dark at the top. So every time I go into the paint, I pick up some medium as well. Medium. sometimes I'm picking up the medium on its own because I don't want to add colour, but I do want to blend. Right, use this dark in here. Might add a bit of red. I want it a little bit more purple. A bit too much red. That's better. That's the colour I'm looking for. Great thing about this tear off palette is it's going to be really easy to clean because I can just dispose of the palette when I'm done. I need to sit back a bit. Now I'm going to be overworking, I think, so put some colour in there, dark in here. Yes, that looks scruffy, but trust me, I kind of know what I'm doing. So that purple colour, so some of that blue, a bit of red and white. So distance. In the original photograph, they're quite silhouetted, which is great. And I'm going to put the colour on, and they're going to be silhouetted, but I'm going to use, rather than a black, I'm going to use a purple, because what that does is it shows a distance. So you see it in mountains, but you will also see it in distance. Taking a photograph does change colours. So this is where, as an artist, you can put them back. Just scrubbing with my brush. Very lightly tapping, because these are winter trees. So they're not just, they are sticks, and you'll see it with this one close up, you'll see lots of the branches, and it's a lot. But in the distance, because there are a lot of branches, it looks a little bit more solid. So, because there's probably a clump of trees together. So I'm just stippling. Quite a dry brush, not much paint on. Can always add. That's the great thing, is I can add. Not doing it quite as much as I would do if it was a tree in full, but this is just suggesting trees in the distance. So here, I'm going to move on to here. So a lot of white for this, because it's a frosty morning. Just trying to think. I will add more colour on. The moment I'm just putting that wash of colour on. Kind of plotting where I'm going to be. A bit of yellow for now, and let's put this hedge in. Doesn't have to be the colour it's staying, but I just need to recognise where it is. That's why I like acrylics. You can kind of just put it on quite haphazardly and then bring it together. Stipple it into. So there are two trees along this hedge. Let me put some dark underneath for now. I find adding a bit of red will darken the Prussian blue. going into the distance, less detail. So, right, so we've got, this is a great photo because it's got lots of drama with all these. I think they're where the field's been ploughed.
Furrows.
I don't think they're furrows. I was thinking about it. They look like tracks and things like that, but there's a lot of them, and they are fabulous direction. So just put them on. Again, I can move them and straighten them. So the thing is, I need to clean my brush. So again, just using the water to clean. I've not used these yet. If I find one brush works for everything, I tend to stick with one brush. I do have spare ones in case something, you know, I feel it's not working and I need another brush, but I'm a bit lazy, tend to stick to the one brush, and it's amazing how much you can get from one brush. Okay, so I'm going to put some white on. Slow dry, medium and white. Reason is, I know it's going to be quite a light background, but this gives me the chance, you know, when you do wet in oils, this is kind of a similar technique. I'm getting the surface wet, so it's got wet paint on, which makes it much easier to move the paint. It'd be much easier to blend. You can see there. And the white's also picking up colour that I've put on, which is why I put it on to start with, because I didn't want just a white background. See, that's coming together already, and that's really very rough marks. But to be honest, you know, say you were out in the field doing plein air painting, this is the kind of marks you would make. This is the kind of way you'd capture that scene very quickly. Because things change very quickly when you're out painting. So you have to work quickly as well. That's a bit more. Because you're using 1-to-1, and I've got, what, how many colours? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colours to one little dash of slow dry medium. So I needed a bit more. Right, got the colour on now. I can now start to finesse it a little bit. So a bit of red. Okay, let's think. That's okay. Just add a bit of colour. Bring that up. So, like I said, I wasn't sure what this is, but it does look like there's some grasses here. So I'm just building up an edge here. It's a bit darker. A lot of this is just now a case of moving the paint where you want it. Now it's on that wet background. I can move it, add a bit more tonal value, add a bit more detail. Oops. Look at that, already I'm messy. If I don't get paint on myself, I get it on the materials. So yeah, look, a bit of dark. It's amazing how just one little mark here and there can bring it together. So all the foreground will need a little bit more detail. But let me get a layer that I'm happy with. Okay, so now I'm going to go back in and start to move forward again. So now I've put this on, it's not finished. I'm going to just edge of this brush. So this is a flat brush. It's one of the SAA oil and acrylic brushes. I could use a short handled brush. This is long handled, which you do use in acrylic because you use it to paint with the tip. And when you're painting at an easel, it's very handy to be able to move your hand up and down. I like it because I like using acrylics, I like the weight handles. So that's why I'm choosing to use a long handled brush. Usually when you're doing work like this, you probably would choose a short handled brush. But it doesn't matter, as long as the brush does the job you want it to. Really doesn't matter what you do. So this is actually quite a bit more dense, so let's add some slightly different interest there. Okay, so you can see here slightly different tonal values, and that adds something to it. I don't need too much in the background at the moment. I will add a few twigs, but it's distance. It's not got so much detail. And like I say, I'm kind of working in a way that is suggestive rather than fully detailed. I'm getting a nice, pretty landscape. And I'm using the original as a reference. It's not quite the same, but that's what you do when you're painting. Right, so I'm going in with the white again. Just soften this. See how you can go over. Want it a little bit more textured. I can't see quite as well as you. When I'm close up, I need to move back. Right, I think I need a little bit. Changing the direction of my marks. You don't have to do everything in one direction. Suggesting that these right grasses, so there is some grasses here. So I think what there's tracks in between some grass, some longer grass. Which I'm suggesting by just flicking the brush. I don't have to use the slow dry medium. I can use it on all the initial layers for all the soft blending, but if I then don't want to create soft lines, I don't have to use the soft dry medium. So I'm using some black just to help me get that darker colour. It just helps me darken. That's too dark. I want a bit more. I want it a colour, not a black colour. Okay, that's better. Now I can just pick up. There you go. And I'm not doing a lot of this, but you can see there that detail is just helping to make that more interesting. Bring the foreground forward a bit. Here, that's a bit messy. Let's go back in and bring some of these out. So you can see how it's gone from quite a scruffy layer. And then you just start to build up. This is the satisfying bit, I think. I quite like the scruffy layer because that's very much me. Just put it on. But I do like this bit. This is where it kind of comes into its own. You can see what it's going to look like. A bit of white. I think there's quite a lot of colour in there. So under the hedge I'm going to just darken. See if I can bring back a couple of furrows. That's a bit strong there. That's a bit too neat, so let's... Right, I think I'm going to do some trees, and while I'm doing the trees, my eye's been taken away from the rest of it, and then once I've done the trees I can come back and see if there's anything else, because I need to put the whites on. There's a few white areas I need to put on, but I'll do that last. So trees, again using a long handle brush. Let's pick up so blue, bit of red, and a bit of the black. I could just do it black, but I want a bit of colour. Don't want it that harsh, solid black. Maybe even a bit of white to one side there. Okay. So I'm going to do my trees from the trunk upwards. That's how I like to do it. Some people do it downwards that way. I find that I'm more comfortable doing it this way. There's no right or wrong. It's how you feel when you hold the brush. So what I'm going to do is use the slow medium for not to keep it slow, but to give it a little bit more wetness in the paint, so it's not quite as dry. There you go. This is fun because it's a bare tree. The leaves are gone. Actually, there's quite a lot of small branches on this one, and I don't think I'm going to have the patience to do them all. So I'll show you another technique which you can do to fill out a tree without filling out all the branches. What's good is a good exercise is to observe. So if this is a landscape you see regularly, what would be good is to observe it and take photos, or if you're really brave, go out and paint it in different seasons, and then you get familiar with the shape of the tree. And you get familiar with how trees grow. So trees are often a different shape to you think. Some people make their branches quite stubby, and actually they can be long, but it also is dependent on the tree. This has got a really nice shape. It's not an even shape, so it's kind of goes up a little bit more on one side, which makes it much more interesting for me. And I am missing out lots and lots of branches. Don't forget, branches also cross each other. I am not spending my time painting all of these because there are a lot. Crossover. Use the medium. It's kind of a flow medium. Okay, that's better. Very lightly and twisting the brush. This is something you practice. If you can't do it with this kind of brush, use a pen. There's nothing stopping how you apply it. It doesn't have to catch all the time either. It's just skipping sometimes on the... Need to make that a little bigger because it is a main branch. There's one here. Quite like that shape. I quite like how it kicks up at the end here. Again, I can't do it that way down. I much prefer going up. That's nice. There's some little ones down here. So I think there's another tree here, so let's just put... Do a few more branches, do that tree, put some branches in the background when I've got this brush, and then we will quickly put on all the tiny branches because there's no way I'm putting on them all, and there is a way you can do it quickly. I think that's got a nice shape, maybe a bit longer here. Let's do this one. Again, it's got a branch here. You know, that's great, you're not going to see a huge amount. I think this is quite a traditional shape, this one. So I'm just looking at the... that's why it comes into the tree here. It comes into this hedge. So it is actually another tree along this hedge. Back into the slow medium, making it... Using it like I would do water, just to make the paint a bit more fluid. That'll do for now. So background, I'm going to just define a couple of marks for these trees. Not much. Maybe strengthen under the... Because they are silhouetted. Just need to lean just to steady my hand a bit. This is delicate. I could go to a tiny brush, but I don't think it's as easy, always as easy as with this brush. This is a size not as it is. Again, part of the long-handled range. You need to roll your brush into the paint to get the paint on. Just adding that little bit more detail into the background. Because these trees are bare, I want to show that they're not solid, full-leaved. I'm doing that by suggesting that there are branches, a lot more branches than you would see normally. Maybe a few twigs. Don't like this because it's very evenly spread. So let's put another tree here. fill that in, bring that together. That's better. So human brain likes to put things quite evenly. It's quite hard. And nature doesn't always do that. A lot of trees do because they're planted like that. But I don't think it looks as good in a composition. So you do have to just maybe add a few more lines. Now, using a dry brush, this is how I'm going to put on those branches. Now I'm loading my brush, dragging it off so the brush is quite dry. And it just catches. Just catches the edge. Don't forget your surface is also still a bit wet, and it will be. You can see there, that's catching and suggesting that this tree has plenty more branches. Dry it off. Pulling it down as well. Making sure you go into the middle, because those branches will be in the middle. Maybe a bit stronger. That's better. You can still see the sky through it. It's not a full leaf tree, and that's just really nicely brought that in. So, clean my brush. Water for cleaning. Right, now, go back in with, put that to one side, it's not being used. Go back in with my flat and some white. Not even using the medium this time. Just putting on, because some of these edges have caught the frost. I think it's frost more than snow. So I'm just adding a little bit more white. And I think I need to also, oops, it's quite strong. Looking at the original, I think I can shadow this a bit more. Slow dry medium, just to help it move. Just blending out some of those lines. We need to distinguish between foreground with more detail and background, where actually things start to get less detailed. Okay. Do I need any more white, or am I just fluffing now? I'm going to I think this side's a bit neglected, but no, I'm fluffing now. When you're painting and you're not really got any purpose to it, that's when you start to fluff. I've probably missed things, but I'm going to do the fun bit now. So, like I said, when I did this before or had a practice using the mediums, I was surprised how long it took to dry. I was going to still not dry. But that's the idea of it. It helps take an acrylic, which is a fast dry medium, just to another level and gives you the opportunity to soft blend. And this is the fun bit. Oh, I didn't say which what I'm using. I'm using the SAA practice canvas sheets because that's really useful for storing. It's triple primed. It's the same as the canvas you get on the stretcher. It's just in a pad, which is much more, for me, means I can store these and stack these instead of having those bulky canvases. If I wanted to, I can put this onto a canvas frame or just put into a frame without needing the stretcher. So I use these a lot, especially when I'm doing a lot of paintings and demos, because I need to find somewhere to store them, and they're much easier to store like this. Isn't that nice? I love this bit because I just think it just suddenly makes it pow. And I enjoy that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I did. So using a slow dry medium, which I haven't used before, to increase the drying time. So it makes acrylics dry much slower, and it gives me that chance for the blending and softening. And I hope you enjoyed that. And join me again soon for another live demonstration.